I mean, this is the stuff that Helena has to endure is just wild. Welcome to Surviving in Books, where life is nuts, so let's escape into great reads. Today, we are going to be talking about Alchemised by SenLinYu. This book is everywhere. BookTube, BookTok, Bookstagram, people at work talking about it. Just everywhere you look, everyone is talking about this book. I did not read Manacled, so I have no frame of reference. I don't understand why everybody loves it, but I had major FOMO, and so I decided to read it. I mean, look how thick she is. This is a thick book. As I was reading it, it just became my whole personality. I cannot put it down. I think about it all the time. I am just enthralled with this book. And so that's why I decided to do a deepish dive. And I'm going to do it in 3 separate videos. There's 3 parts, I think, in this book. From what I can tell, there's 3 different parts. And I'm going to do a deep dive for each one of those parts. So today we are doing part 1, which is the prologue through chapter 21. I'm going to start with giving you some of my thoughts about it. Then I will have a warning, because those thoughts will be spoiler free. And then the warning to let you know that I am going into the deeper dive, spoiler rich section. There will be tons and tons of spoilers. So let's start with my initial thoughts. Again, this is just part 1. So we're just through chapter 21. My initial thoughts are, wow, just wow. This world, these characters, the emotional struggle, all of it is well done. Like the way that this book is written, I am really having a good time, and I want to know what happens next. There are so many breadcrumbs. There are so many little things that I think mean something later. I don't know for sure, but the way that they're put in there, I'm like, this is here for a reason. There is a reason why we are being told this, and I just want to know why. I want to uncover all of those things later, and I am crossing my fingers and so hopeful that that is the case, that this is a well thought out masterpiece and all of those things are there for a reason. And I want to finish this book with no crumbs left. So what is this book about? Maybe you don't know. It starts at the end of a war. And our main character, the FMC, is Helena. She has some of her memories lost. Well, she's discovered. And when they try to interrogate her and they can use their resonance, we'll get into what that is later, in her brain, and they can see that someone has tampered with her memory and there's a chunk missing. So they want to know what is being repressed in her brain. And the story, the first part, is her journey of enduring what they put her through to try to get that back. The things that she endures are dark and disturbing. I mean, Helena goes through it. This is definitely a book where it's similar sort of to the Poppy War, I would say, where you are going to witness the characters go through it and not just Helena, because it is about war and survival, and that is always dark and disturbing, and there is no expense spared on this. We are not coddled. None of it is sugar-coated. It is right there on the page. So definitely check the TWs if you have issues with that, because it is pretty heavy. And you have to be okay with actually being in the head of the person that is enduring it, which I struggle with. I had to stop the Poppy War after the first book because it was just too much. And I'm really hoping that I can get through this book. And so far, so good. Like, it is a lot, but I'm able to push through. The magic system in here is complicated. There's many different layers to it, and you can probably get through the book with a sort of overarching understanding of it. But the more you dive deeper, the more intricate it is. And the way that it's explained in here, I think, makes it, for the most part, easy to understand. I did have to go back sometimes to kind of understand what was what, because there's so much happening in the first part of this book of the world building and trying to understand. And you don't know at this point what of that stuff is important enough that you need to commit to memory, and what of that is just kind of being a part of enriching the environment and the story as you read it. And I'm hopeful that the things that I chose to discuss in here are the important things, and some of the things that I just kind of glaze over are not really important and I should have spent more time on them, but we can always go back. So if we get to part 2 and we're like, wait, this was brought up, we can always go back. So I think I'm okay with it. I have so many feelings about Farron, and I don't know which one's winning. I do feel connected. I do feel connected to him on a strong level. And I don't know if that says something about me or if the writing is supposed to make us feel that way. So I don't know if I'm doing it right and that's how I should feel, or if there's something going on up there that's making me feel that way about someone that maybe I shouldn't be. But I'm a fan. I'm a Farron fan. So the way that the book is in part 1 is we are remembering things, or we're learning things as Helena is remembering them. I don't know what of those memories are important. And I don't want this video to be 8 hours long. So in the next portion, I am trying to hit the major things, and there's still a lot of them. But again, if I miss over something, let me know. If you're like, well, I kind of thought this thing was important and we should have that in the back of our minds, then please, in the comments, let me know if I missed something or if I'm understanding something incorrectly. I have not been online on Reddit or wherever else seeing what other people are saying about this because I wanted this video to be like my true feelings and reactions, but I am always open to discussion. So in the comments, let me know if you disagree or if I missed something, please. I encourage that. Spoilers, 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 spoilers. We are heading to the spoiler section of this video. If you have not read part 1, you don't have to have read the whole thing because I haven't. I'm just talking about part 1. Pause, read it, come back. This is going to contain spoilers for the entirety of part 1. I might mention things later in part 1 towards the middle or the beginning of it. It's just all kind of in my head. So this, you have to have read the entirety of part 1. Let's start off with the map. There is no map in this book. So that I did not like. But the author did post one. And in this map, we can see Palladia. Now, hopefully I am saying that right. I did listen to the audiobook the first time and did my deep dive with the physical copy. So I do know how I'm supposed to say them, but sometimes when I see the words, I say them the way my brain wants to say them anyway. So if I mispronounce something, I'm sorry. But Palladia, this is a map of that. Helena is from Etris, and that is south. Helena is an unreliable narrator, and this usually bugs the crap out of me. Seeing the world and going through things with someone who can't reliably tell you what is happening can be problematic. So throughout at least part 1, we are uncovering things at the same time that she is. But that also means that we can't fully trust what she sees and what she thinks because her brain has been messed with. And that, it makes it a little chaotic for me. I like things kind of systematic, but I think we can deal with it. I think it's not so much so that we think that she is seeing things that are blatantly not there. It's just how she feels about things she still is coming up with, if that makes sense. So she is an unreliable narrator. Who is Helena? She's our FMC. The story is told in her point of view. She's from Etris, like I mentioned, and she came to Palladia to study at the Alchemy Institute. When we first meet her, she is found in a container and she's supposed to be in stasis. She has an IV in her arm that I think is supposed to keep her sort of in a stasis mode so that something can be done with her later. This is at the end of a war and she is one of the prisoners, and this is what the treatment of the prisoners has been. So the people find her and find that she has not been in stasis. She has been awake inside this container, and we later find out for 14 months. So that is kind of nuts. In the dark, in a container, awake, unable to do anything for 14 months. I drew Helena. I'm going to use this whiteboard to keep everything together to make it easier to understand. This, when I bought it, it was much bigger in person than it is now. I don't know if it's too small to be useful, but we're going to try it. If you guys like the whiteboard, the way it is, let me know. If you think you like the whiteboard, wish it was bigger, also let me know. I will get a bigger one. Or if you're like, I kind of could do without it, then I won't worry about it. So let me know in the comments how you feel about the whiteboard. The workers that find Helena take her to Stroud. And Stroud is perplexed. Helena has 2 prisoner numbers. They don't have the proper log about why she's there. She can't believe that she was in stasis, but in the stasis box, not in stasis, for 14 months. She says no one should be able to survive that. So it's a very big mystery surrounding Helena. The war has ended, the resistance lost, and all of the important people of the resistance were unalived in very public manner. There were celebrations held for their unaliving. The people that were less important were put into these stasises for later use and some other uses for the prisoners, which we'll get into later. And Helena was one of the ones that went into stasis, even though she was kind of didn't. Also, as part of the war, there are necromancers on right now we're going to call it the good side and the bad side, just to keep it easy to understand. So the bad side, the side that won, and Helena's on the good side, the side that lost in the resistance. So the bad side has necromancers. Necromancers are able to take a body that the life has left and reanimate it. And it is alive in form. Like, it's not alive in like consciousness sort of thing, but it can move and do what you tell it to and all of those things. And those are called necrothralls. And during the war, the bad side, when people would fall, they could turn them, reanimate them into necrothralls and make them fight their own people. And Helena's remember this thing and like how horrific it was with the necromancers and the necrothralls. And one thing about the necrothralls is in this world, they feel like you have to burn the body once the person has passed away to free their soul. And if you don't do that, part of them is still trapped in there. And so these necrothralls are empty automaton type things, but the original soul is probably trapped in there and becoming corrupted as it's stuck in there. So it's kind of a horrible thing. So I put those up there because there's a lot of terms to kind of keep track of. So necromancers and necrothralls. The necromancers are the people who can reanimate bodies, and those bodies are the necrothralls. Think of thrall. Before the war, Helena was a student at the Alchemy Institute, and she was sponsored by the Holdfast family. The Holdfast family is part of the Eternal Flame, which I think is sort of like a council, like a governing council, and they feel like they were blessed by the god soul to rule. Well, their ancestors were, and so it passes down to them that they should be in charge because they are on the side of right because they were blessed by a god. So in the Holdfast family, there's Apollo, who's the dad, Luke, who is the son, and Ilva, who's the great aunt. They are in the story quite a bit. When Helena came to the Institute, people sort of, since she was not from there, people kind of felt like she took a spot of somebody else, even though the Holdfast sponsored her. And Luke was nice to her. And so that's why she developed a relationship with him. And part of where it started for her to have such a close relationship with him. Then on the bad side, there's the high necromancer Morrow. He is the big bad. He is the culmination of all the bad things that you could think. He's powerful, he's wicked, ruthless, all of those things. So he is on team bad. We get kind of that info dump in these first couple of pages, and I wanted to make sure we sorted it out so that the rest of this makes sense. Then there's a conversation between Helena and Stroud, and Helena uses the word liches for the undying. And the undying are people that Morrow can give immortality to. That's why they're called undying. He does something to them, and then they can't be unalived. And that brings me to the first quote that I wanted to read. She was talking about when Luke was unalived. Stroud was asking about it, and Helena says that the liches did it. The woman chuckled and that's Stroud. I haven't heard anyone dare use that word in a long time. All of the undying, regardless of their forms, are the high necromancer's most ascendant followers. Their immortality is the reward for their excellence. In this new world, death claims only the unworthy. No matter what insults you attempt, it is your friends who are nothing but ashes to be forgotten. So that just explains how the side on the bad think about the undying, and how Helena, how they call them liches, condescending, like bad term. And then the side that they're on thinks that this is a reward and is a great thing to have, that the high necromancer Morrow gives them. So why was there a war? So the Eternal Flame, like I said, was the council sort of thing, and they are the people that rule. Not everybody liked that. Not everybody thought that they were blessed by God and should rule. There was some people who thought maybe they could be over religion and, kind of limit it to that, but let the guilds, those are the people that have resonance, to rule themselves, because they felt like the Eternal Flame was holding them back. They were holding them back from scientific progress, because the Eternal Flame had a very antiquated view of the world, of what resonance was allowed, what was unholy, what was holy, things like that. And they were being stifled. Principate Apollo is taken out. We later find out that it was Farron that did it under the orders of Morrow. And now that he is gone, Luke has to ascend to take his position, and he's only 16, and that creates unease. And also it creates opportunity for the guilds, because they're like, okay, now it's like we can get people on our side if they think that a 16-year-old is better to rule and make decisions than us, who are out here doing all the work and the scientific innovation to make this area, this country better. That's where the conflict started. But what made it different this time, because this isn't the first time that's happened. This is not the first time that people were like, oh, we don't want the Eternal Flame to be in charge. And there have been wars before. But what made this war different was Morrow. And it seemed like he appeared out of nowhere. People thought maybe he was from Hevros or that place over there, and he had some allegiance to them. And there was a reason for that. But he brought with him necromancy and the necrothralls. And that really changed the tide of the war and made it a much bigger deal than it had in the past. In the past, there was an uprising squashed, but this particular one was more difficult because of the big bad Morrow and his ability to make undying, and his call to action for other necromancers to create necrothralls. And that way you have people that are able to fight that aren't alive. So anyone that passes is now on your side, on your army, and you can battle without losing more people. And it was a game changer. Stroud uses her resonance to check Helena to see everything that's going on, because Stroud's able to do that when she can touch you and then see what's going on in your body. And she discovers that her mind has been tampered with and that she is unable to access parts of Helena's memory. Helena is unable to do anything to her own defense because she has metal cuffs on that stop her resonance, basically her powers. And then we get a sort of info dump about resonance and where it comes from. So Lumithium binds the four elements, air, water, earth, and fire together. And in that binding, resonance was created. And we can kind of refer to that as their powers, or you can think of it as their powers. It can be mined by those without resonance, or it causes wasting sickness. So they hire people without resonance to mine it. But what they find out is the people that mine it, their children end up having resonance. So then those children can't work the mines anymore. So they do a lot of importing of people, workers, not like anything nefarious, but workers come to work in the mines from other places because they need people without resonance to mine it so that they don't get sick. The Undying solve this issue because they can just use necrothralls to do their mining. But on the side of good, they don't use necrothralls. And so there is sort of a supply issue with outsourcing and trying to get people to work in the mines. Sol is the godhead of elemental quintessence, and he gave resonance as a gift to elevate humanity. So when I said that the god Sol blessed the holdfasts, he's involved in all of this, at least the belief system is. And it's rare, his quintessence that gives resonance is rare in most parts of the world, but for Palladium, it's not that uncommon to have it. And it's the reason why Helena came to learn at the Alchemy Institute, because it's more common there and they know more about it. So resonance is normally channeled into inorganic compounds, allowing for transmutation or alchemization. So examples of those are moving fire, shaping iron, inorganic compounds. That's what normally resonance does. So I have another quote. However, in a defective soul, which rebelled against Sol's natural laws, the resonance could be corrupted, enabling vivimancy, like what the woman had used on Helena, and the necromancy used to create necrothralls. So there's resonance, which is your power. And then there's transmutation or alchemization is when you use that resonance to change inorganic compounds, fire, iron, etc. Then if you use your resonance on organic compounds like people, then that's called vivimancy. And that is supposed to be a bad thing from the eternal flame. They think it's corrupting the gift, and it is bad. And an example of that is necromancy, turning something that is not supposed to be alive to alive, but kind of not alive, but like an automaton, like a robot. I know this is kind of like an info dump right now, but the first bit of this, that's all that it is. And it's done creatively, like by different conversations with different people. But basically the point is for us to know what world we've been dropped in. And that's why I'm doing all this whiteboard stuff. And I think when we get further along and then part 2 and part 3, we're going to be very thankful that we did this. So bear with me. And let's just get through these things. Okay, the next thing I wanted to say was, quote 3. Stroud looked sharply at Helena, her eyes narrowed. Really? A healer, you say? The way Stroud spoke was venomous. She cleared her throat, glancing around. Of course I knew there were vivimancers who supported the eternal flame, as if martyring themselves could earn acceptance, even though the faith spurned their gifts as an abomination. Her eyes were scathing. I just didn't realize this was one of them. So the eternal flame, vivimancers, they think they're bad, like I said. And Stroud, being a vivimancer, takes offense to the fact that the eternal flame thinks that just because she was born with this gift that she's a bad person. And she is appalled to find a vivimancer that was with the eternal flame, because she's like, in her mind, how could you support a cause who thinks you're an abomination? And I have to agree with that. How are you supporting someone who thinks that you are inherently bad, but is okay with using you for their good? Something about Helena that I don't understand. Her sense of no self-worth, and she is okay with whatever is given to her as long as she can stay with the eternal flame and be on the side of Luke. I don't understand that. And it is something that I have issues with in my head throughout most of this part of the book. Then we talk to Grace, who is a prisoner, and she again catches us up on some more important info. Lila Bayard was one of Luke's protectors. They call them paladins. She was captured and she ran. And when she ran, she was brought back, and then she was strung up outside of the gates. She had a twin brother, Soren, who was also one of Luke's protectors. But Helena doesn't remember him at first, and he slowly comes to her mind, and whenever she thinks about him, she gets a headache. So we know there's something important about Soren, where he is, why he wasn't caught. And then she thinks back about Lila is always with Luke. So how was it that Helena, before she went into the stasis container, witnessed Luke being executed during the celebrations, like Lila should have been caught before Luke. So how did that happen first? And then now she's learning from Grace that Lila was captured later. That doesn't make sense. So there's something going on in the memories that Helena doesn't remember that would make this make sense, I assume. Grace also tells us that Morrow has the High Reeve, who he sends to fetch all the people. So he's the one who found Lila. And he has some sort of monster that he also uses. So anyone that runs from that's a prisoner is brought back, and they're usually not alive. And he is this very powerful individual who can use his resonance without touching someone, which Helena questions, saying that that's not possible. And then Grace scoffs and is like, you don't know what you're talking about. Absolutely, it is. Then an interesting thing that I thought was kind of random at the time, but then made sense later, is Grace tells Helena she wants to sell one of her eyes. She says that they're paying good money for them, and she has two brothers who weren't a part of the resistance, so they are being left alone, but they need money. So she wants to sell one of her eyes, and we're just like, why? Why was this dumped here, this eye thing? But fast forward, we later find out that Farron, the High Reeve, has eyes in his house, so he can see. He can somehow animate them, and he can see when he's not in the room. So I thought that was interesting. But this is another example of how the author puts these breadcrumbs that then make sense later, that eye thing being one of them. Helena gets taken to Morrow, and we get to see Morrow for the first time. And he is a hot mess. He is gross. He's decomposing. He's grotesque. He has a whole lot of things going on, and we're just kind of wondering what's wrong with him. Shiseo is there, and he takes her cuffs off, and he does something different because that's an outdated way to do it, and puts tubes in her wrists instead, which is very barbaric, to stop her resonance for her to be able to use it, and then wraps them up. And then we also meet Mandel. We find out that she's the reason why Helena was in the stasis box, not actually in stasis. And Mandel did it out of jealousy because she didn't want her to be discovered and her gifts to be discovered and her to get favor with Morrow, which is crazy. And her defense was, well, she had planned to go back later. She didn't mean for her to stay like that the whole time. What? So Morrow is very upset. He is upset about that. And then we get to see a glimpse of the power. He uses his resonance to open her up, reaches inside and takes this little metal looking thing that I think is, I guess, the thing that makes her undying and is what makes her her. And then he puts it into a corpse. And then that corpse stands up and now it is her. If something happens to the body that the undying is in, then Morrow is able to take them out of that and put them into a different body so that they continue to live. But now they are a lich, according to the terminology that Helena uses. And this metal that he takes out has a lumithium gleam to it. And it is some sort of key, I think, to how the undying work and possibly how to get rid of them. While Shiseo is there, we don't know what the deal with Shiseo is because he worked with the Eternal Flame, but now he's helping Morrow. And so that's kind of confusing how he switched sides. He's not from Palladium. He came from a different place to work there. So that's also sort of interesting. But he tells Stroud and Morrow about General Bayard, who was injured in war. And he was able to be healed, his body. And then when his body was healed, it was very badly. He was very badly hurt, but his brain wasn't healed. So his body was fine, but his brain was still the brain of a child. And the thought was, well, they came up with some sort of solution, was that someone could slowly touch his brain with their resonance and reroute it to undo the damage that was done to it. Stroud is shocked by this because the ability to do this with your resonance, to go into someone's brain and kind of work around in there and change things about, is animancy. So the decision is to send Helena to the High Reeve because he is an animancer. And this is I assume Morrow doesn't want to do it himself because it's going to be a painstakingly slow process to do this over time. And he's probably like, I got better things to do. So send her to the High Reeve. The reason why this ability is important is because right now, if something were to happen to the body of an Undying, you can take them and you can put them into a body. And then like we saw with Mandel, and then they can live in that body, but that body starts to deteriorate. Them being in it the body doesn't sustain itself. The thought that you could do something like this with the mind might open up the possibility of taking one of the Undying and putting them into a body that's alive. And doing this is called a transference procedure or Mithridatism. Helena, on her way out, passes by Penny, who was a student, and she enlisted with the resistance. And Penny says, "You were right. I'm so sorry. We should have listened to you." Finally, we are at Spirefell, and it is a house made of iron, so it's a weapon in of itself, and it has necrothralls, but there are so many different comments that Helena makes about how these necrothralls seem different. They're less sluggish. They aren't waxy in appearance. They're spry. They're less gross. And there are times where Helena says she looks at one and they look like they're moving normal. And then when she looks at them, they like slow their movement, like they're trying to be like all the other necrothralls. So I'm not sure what's going on with that, but there has to be something important because it keeps coming up multiple times. So when we get to Spirefell, we finally meet Kane Farron, and I have so many feelings about Kane. I don't even know where to start with them, but he is just everything. He's everything. His hair is white, although Helena thinks that she remembers it being dark. His skin is pale, and there's like a weirdness about him, and I'm just like, what's going on with my boy? Like, what's going on with him? Why is his hair white now and his skin so pale more than she remembered it? And then we also have to meet Aurelia, and no likey. I put Farron up there, and I don't have white, or you wouldn't be able to see white, so I made his hair yellow because I just wanted him to stand out from the other people. The Farrons are a very wealthy family from iron. They were an iron working family, but then iron kind of became something that wasn't the most industrial and helpful. So then they went into steel manufacturing, and that's where they really made their money, and they became very wealthy. But she says the house doesn't feel like someone who's very wealthy. And it's something that Aurelia kind of complains, like, why don't they get more necrothralls? Why don't they do all of this stuff since they're a house full of worth? But it seems like that is stuff that Farron just has zero interest in. Farron was a student like Helena, and she remembers beating him in the National Alchemy exam one year. They were sort of not necessarily rivals, but competing for the number one spot with each other. And then when he was asked if he knew her, he said, "Hardly." And his eyes flickered away. But once we get to the end of part one and some of her memories come back, we know that that's not true. So he is pretending not to know her, and we need to figure out why that is. Then he reads her memories, and it goes all the way through her being found, through her stasis, and just the blackness of her being there, and then her working at the hospital. Now, in this point, now that we have, we know how part one ends, and some of her memories come back of her having a conversation with him, I'm wondering if he is looking for any trace of the chunk that's missing. He's trying to figure out how much she doesn't remember, because clearly there's stuff that he knows that happens that she doesn't. And I think maybe that's why he is always touching her head and going through her memories to see what of those things come back. She has to wear red dresses because Aurelia is a horrible person. She's an absolute B, and saw Helena cringe from the red roses, so decides that because she doesn't like red, she can now wear red. She has the first transference procedure. It's super painful, seizures, fevers, all of those things. And then Farron looks at her memories and sees Helena looking at him, thinking that he looks unnatural. and something's sort of alien about him. And something about that infuriates him. And he like yells for her to get out. And then she starts going and running. And then she looks down at the foyer and she sees the dragon on the foyer. And it is actually this symbol. That is the symbol that she sees. It's an Ouroboros. Is that how you say it? Ouroboros. The dragon with its tail and its teeth, like it's consuming itself. Interesting. Look at this. Part 1 has it also. And speaking of the chapters, part 1 has it, but the chapters have the 2 moons, which we learn are Lumithia and Luna. And they're in, each chapter changes with the different phases of the moon as time passes. The way that the moons are in the sky is different. So that's pretty cool, I thought. She has to have time in between the procedures because her brain just can't tolerate it. And that annoys Farron. And maybe that annoys him because of the time it's going to take, or maybe that annoys him because he's hopeful that she gets those memories back. We don't know. She's trying to get creative to unalive herself or Farron so that those memories that she's supposed to be protecting, she thinks they're for the eternal flame, and she doesn't want them to get out, whatever she's holding on to. She keeps going back to Luke and how much she wants to not fail him in this. Helena reads a newspaper and she sees an article when she's on it saying that she's now staying at Spirefell. And Farron says, oh, that's a good idea because now maybe if there's anybody left, they'll try to come rescue you. So now Helena has some sort of hope that maybe someone is out there looking for her and maybe someone does exist and it's not just her. But also in this newspaper article, there's mention of Stroud's breeding program. And it is mentioned as though it's a way to repopulate from all the alchemists lost in the war. As far as Helena's physical body, we learn that she's been sterilized and it was something she had to agree to from the religious superior of the eternal flame, Falcon Mattius. And he's just kind of a horrible person. But when he found out that she was a vivimancer, which they think is the soul being corrupted, he wanted to make sure that she didn't procreate. And that was one of the agreements that she had to have to be able to serve as a healer for the eternal flame. And then we also find out that she's got scars on her body that she doesn't notice, like a big one down her sternum and that one doesn't look like it was healed with resonance or healing, like it just sort of healed on herself. We don't know what that is. And when Stroud visits again, she finds out that Helena is sterilized and she is very upset. She can't believe that Helena would be dumb enough to agree to that and dumb enough to think that because of who she is so bad that she shouldn't be able to procreate. And she makes a huge fuss of it. And every time Stroud visits after that, she touches Helena's body and Helena wakes up sore with injections. And we find out that she was reversing her sterilization. I mean, this is the stuff that Helena has to endure is just wild. Helena starts to have dreams, and there is, I have these quotes from these dreams that she had with Luke in her dreams. And I think these are important. Part of the dream, it's the two of them. What happened to us, Hel? He asked as she crouched down beside him. She stared at the horizon, past all the towers towards the south. A war, she said. You used to believe in me. What did I do to make you stop? His voice was far away. I still believe in you, Luke, she said, but we have to win this war. We can't make choices because we want a certain story to tell later. There's too much at stake. Fast forward to another quote. What if it's not that simple, though, she said. Everyone who wins says they were good, but they're the ones who tell the story. They get to choose how we'll remember it. What if it's never that simple? Up until now, all we see is her talking about how wonderful, or remembering how wonderful Luke is. He walks on water. He's the perfect person. He was the only person that would talk to her when she came into school. He was thrown into a job at 16. It's not his fault that he was young. he lost his father. He was a victim and all that. He just wants what's good. And this is a glimpse of the two of them not being on the same page. We don't know exact details of why not, but she is questioning things and he is saying, well, what happened? Like, why don't you believe in me? And it seems like maybe she's coming to terms with the eternal flame and all that it stands for, maybe not being the best that it should be. At least that's what I'm hoping is happening. And we have to somehow get to a point where she has that conversation with Farron later, and that's the only way I can think to get from point A to point B. But this is definitely a turn in the normal conversations that she has within herself where Luke is concerned. This dream shows that there has to be some sort of disconnect happening. I added Farron's parents. Atreus is inside of Crowther's body. Crowther was part of the Eternal Flame, but I just put those up there. Another random thing, Farron has a silver ring that he wears. He has no wedding ring, nothing but the silver ring, and it's an old thing, and he tosses it to Helena to look at, and she looks at it, and then she sees that it seems like a ring that he's had on for a long time that he does nothing to, and it's just the way that it looks if you don't take it off and wash it and care for it and things like something that he just doesn't take off. And I don't know why that's in there, but I feel like that's important. Maybe I can add a ring to his finger. Another transference, another seizure. She asks Farron while she's post-ictal from the seizure, who is he? And she uses her home language, Etrasian, and he answers, I think back in the same language, I'm in charge of your care. And she mulls over those words. I'm in charge of your care. Those mean something. Farron gives her pills so that she can get over her nerves of walking the house. She's scared of shadows. She's prone to fits. She's able to make her way now throughout the house. And while she's in, she discovers a room that has alchemy symbols in it. And I don't know. These symbols have to mean something, but the way that the symbols are in this room is parts of them are removed that make them so that the person looking at them doesn't know what they were intended for. So the person who made them did that for a reason. And I think this room is important. There is something about this room, something about these symbols that matter. When she leaves, he closes the door and she can hear it locking. But while she's in there, one of the Necrothals comes and she can see that the Necrothal is mouthing the word Cain, Cain, Cain until Farron flicks his wrist to make her go away. What is that? Again, with the Necrothals being a little more alive than they should be, and this room, yes, we need to put a pin in both of these things because those matter. We get another dream with Lila. I think the transference maybe is making her be able to access some of these other parts of her mind. And Lila is saying, I've made a mistake. I've been lying to everyone. Then there's another dream with Helena telling Lila that she's being replaced as a healer. Mattias is getting rid of her. And she is thinking, why would that be the case as she's thinking on this dream? Why would they be training another healer? So that is something for us for later. But basically, throughout all of these different snippets of dreams, we're getting the understanding that something's rotten in Denmark. There is something going on with the Eternal Flame that was not good. And Helena has repressed reasons for why that is and what became of it. And I think we're just going to slowly over time get these things, and we're going to have to go back and put them together like a jigsaw puzzle, I guess. Helena gets a hold of a knife and she tries to end Farron, and it doesn't work, obviously, because he's undying. Then she is taken to Morrow, unrelated, not because of that. Morrow wants to see the progress that's being made, and he is upset that once he reads her mind, he finds out that Helena must have done this to herself, this memory loss. Her resonance is stopping herself from recovering these memories, and that's what they're fighting. They're fighting her own animancy, and Stroud is like, can't believe that that's actually a thing. But the fact that Farron didn't notice that, or maybe he did, but he didn't say anything, we don't know, because we don't know where Farron's loyalties are at this point. But it makes Morrow mad, and he ends Farron right there, and then he like comes back to life. So we get two instances sort of close together of Farron dying and coming back to life. Like, I think it was a little bit before that, there was talk of Mandel, who actually was unalived by a crossbow. So there is a way to end the undying. And I think that was the reason for that. They don't know if it was meant, they think it was meant for the governor, but maybe it was meant for Mandel. But there is a way to end them. So we get a way of how to do it, and then two ways of how not to do it. And there is someone that I need to add, and that is Bennett. He comes up a bunch. He taught Stroud. He taught / tortured Farron. He is on the side of the bad, and his lab was the lab that Farron's dad saw Helena coming out of after it exploded. I'm pretty sure I got that right. From what I can tell, Bennett seems to be a horrible person who took great pleasure in doing horrible things to Farron, and is probably part of the reason why Farron is the way that he is. But there was the Westport lab that blew up, and he, I think, was inside of it, and Atreus saw Helena at that time. After seeing Morrow, because the second time he's in even worse condition, like he is being held up by bodies to help him move in different places. He is not long for the world. So Helena starts thinking, and she thinks that every time that he makes an undying, he pays a price for it. And because he's made them, he is slowly like dying. He doesn't have long to live. And that's why he is so invested in this process of the transference procedure, because he needs to be able to move himself into a body. But when an undying is moved into another body as a lich, they resume the powers of the person that they go in. They can't bring their powers. So if he and Helena and Farron, I think, are the only animancers that we know about in this story. So if he goes into a different body, he will lose his ability to be an animancer. So it is important for him to figure out a way that he can move from body to body, but keep the powers and not take the powers from the body that he's going in. And Helena figures out all of this stuff. And the breeding program is for, I guess, sort of the backup plan. Well, it was original plan A, the breeding program, to find an animancer that he can go into so he can keep his animancy. But plan B, or maybe it's now becoming plan A, I don't know, they're trying to figure that out, is if they can use a transference procedure that he can just go into anybody and keep his animancer. So that is sort of like all of the goals that Morrow has right now that we're figuring out are his motives for the things that he is doing as far as the breeding program and the things with Helena. Then we get this scene with Lancaster, and I'm not really sure what the point of this scene was. He tries to kidnap her. He bites her like he wants to eat her or something like that. And then Farron catches him and disembowels him, and then later in the hospital ends him. And the scene seems kind of like, why did we need that? But the only reason I can think that there was a point for this scene is because of this quote: "Farron always comes for me." She had an interaction with Lancaster before, and Farron was reading her memories, and he was going back and forth, and he could see the relief that she had when he showed up to end that interaction. And so we see Helena slowly changing her feelings and opinions of Farron to the point that when this is happening, the only thing that she can think of is Farron always comes for me. So that's what I think is really the only point of this scene. Otherwise, it's just kind of like a string of grotesque stuff that I kind of could have dealt without. Speaking of grotesque scenes, Aurelia tries to take Helena's eyes. I mean, she is mad because she's jealous. And I understand that she's had a bad lot in life. She just wanted to go into a marriage that she thought would benefit both of them, have an heir. He doesn't touch her. He doesn't care about her. He doesn't want to do any of the things. He makes her live without the lavishness of all of her friends. He doesn't get jealous when she has affairs. So she's just pretty much over it. And then she finds out that Farron does the stuff to Lancaster because he went after Helena, and she's just had enough. So she tries to take her eyes, which is just absolutely crazy. We hear the Necrothals outside like hollering, which is something Necrothals usually aren't supposed to do. So there's another one of those. And then the eyes in the room, I think, are the reason why Farron knew. And then he was able to use the house to stop her before he was even in the house. He just had to be on the property, which is just a sign of just this crazy amount of power. And when Aurelia's in there, I'm like, yes, finally, yes, we are done with her. But no, he does whatever, and she's back, and he tells her off and stuff, but she's still around. I kind of wished we were done with her. But again, Farron always comes for me. And this makes me think of the thing with Mandel. She was out with the governor and there was a crossbow. So do we think that maybe there is a reason why she was the one who was targeted, considering she was the one who had done wrong to Helena? I'm just going to put that out there and see what y'all think about it. And then, dun, 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 Helena's sterilization has been reversed. Farron is like appalled. He didn't know that was happening. Helena is appalled. And she's given the option, and Farron, that they can either try to have a baby, and hopefully it has some animancy, or she can be sent to Central, and there are other candidates. This, of all the stuff, the disemboweling, all of the things, this is probably the hardest for me to read. It's not exactly coercion, but it's enough. It's enough, because neither one of them want to do this, but they have to do it anyway. And that I was cringing inside and outside. I did not like this part at all, at all. He takes a pill. I don't know if that's like a performance enhancer because he's not in the mood, or if it's one of those dull emotion things or whatever. And so, first time happens, he goes into the bathroom, he's like retching and comes out, and his eyes are all bleary. I don't know if that meant that he cried or whatever, but clearly both of them hated it. And the fact that they had to be put in that situation is a bit bothersome to me. The next time, before I say that, so this first time, there was no, the physiological signs when it's like your first time. And Stroud says, oh, well, that may be because you're 20. And I'm like, maybe that wasn't the first time, because she has a chunk of her memory missing. I feel like maybe, because why would the author put that detail in there? Why not have her have those physiological signs and mention it? Another thing to think about. The next time, Stroud gives her a pill that makes her want it, but it's weird because her brain doesn't, but her body does. So she feels completely betrayed, and it's still cringy and awkward between the two of them. Then, I'm grateful that it wasn't super graphic on page. It was enough, maybe too much, but it definitely could have been more. It was enough that this is definitely an adult book, but it could have been more. And I'm very thankful that it wasn't, because that by far were the hardest pages for me to get through. And if that wasn't enough, we get to a scene where Lumithia is in full ascendance. And what does that mean? That means in full brightness. And that means that the people that have resonance, they get moon drunk. So there's two moons, Lumithia and Luna. And I have a quote about what that means. When she was in ascendance, it had an intense effect on alchemists. For those with low resonance, ascendance was the only time of year they could transmute, while alchemists with strong abilities found themselves disoriented by her radiance. Moon drunk, people called it. Ascendants had a particularly heightened influence on Palladians. A sign of Palladia's deep connection to the gods, according to the faith. Luke and Lila used to get so intoxicated from it they'd have trouble walking straight, while Helena, in a true fashion of a foreign unbeliever, had only felt anxious, a heavy sense of dread pressing down on her. So with the Ascendants, Helena's dinner doesn't come. She starts worrying. She's looking around for Farron. She can't find him. She finally finds him in this room, and he is both moon drunk and drunk. He kisses her, and she likes it. They actually enjoy a kiss, and then he hits a spot on her neck, and they both are just horrified by that happening. Probably horrified. He's horrified that it's probably a spot maybe he's done that to before, and the spot still works, and so that horrifies him. Maybe that's a theory of mine. And she's horrified because she's being held captive by this person, and she's having feelings for him, and that's confusing. She goes, she leaves, she tries to bang her head against the wall to end herself, and he doesn't let her. And then she makes some comment about, there's something wrong with me. Why am I falling for you? I think I'm lonely. And something about that makes him snap, and he fills with rage. He smiled at her, his grin almost fanged. That's all this is. You can't bear being alone. You'll do anything for the people who let you love them. He raised an eyebrow. Wasn't that what the war was? You wanted to fight, but when they realized what you were, Ilva Holdfast decided you were better suited as Holdfast sacrificial lamb. They put you on death row before Holdfast even saw combat. He's mad. He's mad with decisions that she made that she doesn't even remember. He's mad probably because here again, she is just this total martyr thing that she has. And now she feels like she's just latching onto him to be the next sacrificial lamb type thing. So he is in a rage, and he ends it by saying he'll never want her. And there's some serious emotional baggage going on there that we don't quite know about. And now she's pregnant, and the resonance that she has that is happening in her head, keeping her memories away, it's taking its toll. It's having to decide that it wants to, her body has to use its energy to grow this human in her. And because it's doing that, it can't keep up with whatever the animancy is that she has in her head, keeping these memories. So she's having horrible headaches. She can't eat. She's fading. And Stroud thinks that by the end of this, the memories will be uncovered. There will be a baby, and there won't be much left of Helena, because every time you heal or you use your vivimancy, a little part of you gets taken away. And so you start to deteriorate over time. And she has been doing a lot of healing. And she says sometimes she could even feel those little pieces being drifted away from her into the person that she's healing. So she is having a tough time of this. And Stroud thinks that maybe she had done so much healing that her body was already well on its way in that process. But also the effect that it's going to have of this reversing happening in her head and her having a baby, especially with it being from Farron and him having strong resonance, that this might be a difficult pregnancy because he was a difficult pregnancy for his mom. So Stroud pretty much thinks that they're going to get a baby, they're going to get her memories, and then she's not going to have much long after that. So Helena is drifting away, and Farron is there holding her hand, massaging her hands, which is very unusual but sweet at the same time. And then we have this quote. Helena dreamed that her room was filled with moonlight, except instead of coming through the windows, the light came from Farron. His eyes had that eerie silver glow as he sat next to her, her hand in his once more, but this time her palm was pressed against his chest so that she could feel his heartbeat. She couldn't help but think something was supposed to happen, but nothing did. The dead sensation in her wrists was like a pit. She felt like an hourglass, the final grains of sand finally running down. It was almost over. She could feel herself slipping away. The room flipped as she dragged up and crushed tight. Stay. Please. Stay. The light grew, and the strangest sensation came over her. a glow inside her chest, familiar, even though she was certain she'd never experienced anything like it before. The constant feeling of strain inside her chest, like a thread pulled to the verge of snapping, slowly faded away. She closed her eyes, drawing a struggling breath, and the dream dissolved into nothingness. So this is an intense moment here. This is an intense moment between the two of them. There is something going on with inside of him, this sort of light and his connection and rubbing her hands and her fading and him asking her to stay. This is monumental. This is a monumental thing happening. And then she on the brink of going into like the end of her life is able to be pulled back because of him. That is huge. And then when that happens, her brain starts flooding with things that her animancy was preventing her from having. And I wasn't going to do this, but I want to read this other thing because I think this is, I don't know. I really like this quote here. This is Farron. I have warned you, if something happens to you, I will personally raise the eternal flame. That isn't a threat. It's a promise. Consider your survival as much a necessity to the resistance as holdfasts. If you die, I will kill every single one of them. It was like falling. The past broke free, surging through her mind and swallowing her. So that is the quote that I referred to a bunch of times. He and her had a connection. He cared about her. She stuck on this martyrdom, wanting to sacrifice herself for the eternal flame, no matter what the cost, always like, yes, I'll do it, with no care to her own well-being, and him being fed up with it. It's like, if they do something to you, I will end them. And that's where we end. And that is really exciting to know what happens next in part 2. Situation with her dad is kind of how it is here. Just because you're a surgeon in a different country doesn't mean you get recognized as a surgeon here. So he didn't really get held up to the high esteem that he should have based on how smart he was and how he already was a medical doctor. I put a circle with a cross for all the people that we know are no longer with us. And one of them who I hadn't really mentioned was Enid Farron, which is Farron's mother. She died 3 years after Luke was in power. So we don't know. There's probably something going on with that. And maybe that has something to do with why Farron was on the side that he is on now. If there was something that has to do with his mother's death, I feel like there's got to be something there, but we don't know. There was also a lot of stuff in this book about the planets and their compounds and which planet is each compounds thing. I didn't really get into that because this video would be even longer than it is. There's also stuff about the gods. I mentioned Sol because that god is the one that gave the power to the holdfast, or at least that's one belief. But there is other stuff in the gods about the gods that I didn't touch on. And if that turns out to be something significant later, then I'll go back and revisit it. Also, there was a dream with Shiseo where Helena was messing with nickel, and he said that if she were to use a nickel titanium alloy, then it would give her a weapon that was light enough that she could handle. And she's like, I'm not here to make weapons. And he said not to limit herself. So we got a flashback that seems like he was friendly with her, even though he's the one who put the manacles on her and is now working with Morrow. Not sure what's going on with that, but that was a flashback. I don't know if that nickel titanium thing is significant, but I feel like it must be. I hope it is. I don't like when we get tidbits that aren't useful. So I hope that is. Helena mentions that she suspects Farron is the reason his identity as High Reeve was discovered, and she's pondering why, and she thinks maybe he's trying to overthrow the High Necromancer Morrow. And I think that goes along with my theory that maybe he was responsible for Mandel, one, because she messed with Helena, but also if he is trying to get rid of the Undying and maybe he's the one with the crossbow getting rid of them so that he can take power. I think Helena might be onto something with that. The last person that I didn't mention was Matron Pace, who Helena worked for as a healer. I don't know how significant she is in the story, so for now I'm going to leave her off the board, but if she comes up more and more, then I'll add her. Okay, now I just want to get into a couple of theories. Now, if you don't like hearing people's theories before you finish a book, by all means, just end it here, but please remember to like and subscribe. But if you do, and you like to brainstorm about and think about what did I just read and what could it possibly mean, then this is the part for you. So 1, I already mentioned that Helena didn't bleed the first time she and Farron were together, and Stroud attributed that to her being in her 20s. But I think that maybe that wasn't her first time. Second theory, Soren. He's a big old question mark on that board. Where is he? I think he has something to do with the plan that Helena had in her head that was so important that she had to erase her own mind, because when she thinks about him, she gets a headache, and she didn't even remember him at first. And every time he comes, she gets a headache. I think he has something to do with that. Is he maybe the one who has the crossbow that is getting rid of the Undying? Or is he maybe doing that with Farron? I don't know. Number 3, Luke being captured, but Lila still being alive. That's unusual in a bodyguard situation. She's literally supposed to give her life to protect him. So how did that come about? And then her in the dream saying she's been lying to everyone. Something is going on with Lila. I don't know if she's a part of Helena's plan, or maybe there was a disconnect between her and Luke. Maybe that means she's on Team Helena in all of this and the unraveling of the eternal flame. I'm not sure. But that disconnect between Luke and Lila is significant, I think. Number 4, I brought up that I think Farron might have been behind Mandel because of what he did to Lancaster. And maybe that is because he is a protector of Helena and he doesn't like anyone that messes with her. Or maybe he's a part of this whole Undying thing. So that's my theory number 4. Number 5, the eternal flame seems shady AF. Like, this is, I believe that they actually are religious extremists, like it said in the newspaper, and there is something going on there. Do I think Luke was bad? At this point, no, I don't think so. I think he believed in the cause, but the cause was corrupt by the people that were in power. I mean, Falcon Matthias is just awful. Like, I think that there has to be something that was going on there that Luke was just blind to, but that Helena and maybe Lila and Soren knew was going down. There was something big happened. And so much of this story is alluding to the fact that there is a good versus evil, but that both sides can have good and can have evil. Like, the eternal flame is supposed to be this good thing, but yet they treated Helena like crap. And then the other side is supposed to be bad, yet Farron, I feel like, isn't absolute value bad. So maybe this is about how you can have good and bad in both, and it's never just about right versus wrong. So that is 5 theories that I have. And one last thought I have is just about Helena and her sense of being a martyr, her serious martyr issues. They annoy me. I hope that we get a flip of this. The way that she speaks to Luke and how she just wants to be the sacrificial lamb for him, no matter what the cost to her and the detriment to her, she's always like, I have to protect. I need to end my life if that means that I can protect Luke. Then we get these flashbacks in these dreams, and it seems like they weren't quite getting along, but yet she still holds on to this martyrdom sacrifice for him. I hope we move away from that, because honestly, I don't enjoy reading that. I hope it is for a point and we get to see her character arc and her growth, and she moves away from that to something else. We got a little glimpse of it when she became pregnant and she asked Farron, please, you can do anything to me. Just please don't let them take my baby. This is the first time that we see her asking for something. It's always about, what can I do for you? And I'll do it. But she finally has a request. She has a baby, a person growing inside of her. And that brings out her ability to want something. Granted, it's not for herself. And I don't know if she'll ever actually want things for herself. It's for another being. But still, it is her requesting and caring about something she cares about for once. So there is promise in that. And I like that. And I hope we continue down that path. Something I forgot to mention, and it's just dawning on me right now, is when they were in the room and Farron was moon drunk, he used the name Helena for the first time. He usually referred to her as the prisoner or maybe Moreno, but he called her Helena in that intimate, close moment. And I think that moment there It's one of the moments that I think about the most. Granted, he was drunk and all of that, but they had chemistry and connection. And that is a big foreshadowing for either a past that they've had or some kind of connection that they have between the two of them. I don't want to say like mates, because I don't know if mates is a thing, but sort of on that level, that deep connecting thing between the two of them. They have that, or they have past. Either way, that moment was to show us that there is something there. And I think about that moment quite a bit. So part 2 is up next, and we go back in time. So hopefully we will get answers to all of the questions that I had, and we will see if the theories that I have are right or wrong. But I am very excited to keep reading, because this story, just like I said, it is just consuming my mind. This video is probably way too long. I don't know how long it'll be because I still have to edit it. But I think that all of these things are really worth it. When I first saw the length of this book, I thought, wow, that's way too long. But I think it all has meaning. But we will see. Once we get to the end, I may come back and be like, none of that was relevant. But as of now, I want to point out all of those things because there's a possibility that it might be. So anyway, please remember to like and subscribe. That's really big and important, and I appreciate all of you have already done it. And I will see you next week with part 2.